I like rocks. No, this isn't a joke, and yes, it will connect to NMIXX, just bear with me. Throughout my life, I've had these little obsessions. Random things I'd stumble upon through everyday experiences that I would inexplicably become infatuated with. One of these rabbit holes I fell into began during a trip to a museum with my mother. I don't remember the museum's theme or what exhibits we saw, but I do remember the souvenir shop at the end. One of those obligatory stops designed to tempt visitors into spending just a little bit more money. 12-year-old me didn't yet know about capitalism and poorly made, definitely copyright infringing merch. I just wanted to look around. That is where I found a small book called Rocks, Crystals, and Minerals. It was tiny, just about the size of my hand, but its cover was mesmerizing. Beautiful, colorful geodes that struck just the right chord with me. I begged my mom to buy it, and when she finally relented, I couldn't have been happier. That book became my world for weeks. Every day after school, I'd read pages of it, poring over its words and pictures until I finished it. Then I'd start again, rereading it until my curiosity outgrew its contents. That fascination with rocks consumed me for years, and while my interest has faded over time, certain pieces of knowledge have stayed with me. Specifically, the story of the Lodestone. No, not the Lodestone from Final Fantasy XIV, and yes, I will take any excuse to mention that game, thank you very much. The Lodestone wasn't the prettiest rock in that book, and my preteen, aesthetics-driven self nearly overlooked it. But what it lacked in flash, it made up for in significance. Lodestones are naturally magnetized pieces of the mineral magnetite, holding the chemical formula of iron oxide. The lodestone's magnetic properties helped create the first compass, guiding humanity through the unknown. Learning about this particular rock allowed me to learn about magnets, including a fundamental rule on how they function. When a magnet, like the lodestone, breaks, something fascinating happens. Instead of losing its magnetic properties, each fragment of the lodestone becomes a new magnet with its own north and south poles. Breaking it doesn't destroy its essence. It multiplies it. The pieces carry on, still functioning, still magnetic, but now divided and transformed. This idea of breaking, of being fractured yet retaining what is integral to you, even finding new possibilities within those cracks, was the final piece I needed to solidify my love with NMIXX's Break. In case you haven't guessed already, that chemical formula I mentioned, a part of NMIXX's Break's title, stands for the mineral that makes up lodestones. I believe that this theme I mentioned, while I'm sure does have lore implications, more interestingly to me, mirrors NMIXX as a group. What emerges from the fracture isn't failure, but transformation, evolution, and just like the lodestone, the pieces carry on, stronger in their multiplicity. And in my really annoying need to find symbolism and meaning in every facet of media I consume and analyze, I think the pieces of NMIXX's Break can be looked at from a lot of different angles, ranging from their music evolution, the individual tracks of this particular album, and the very public struggle NMIXX has had with perception. And to even begin addressing all of those different facets, what better place to start than the beginning? When NMIXX debuted with Admire, the reception was nothing short of disastrous. Their mixed pop concept, while not unique, was the first time a K-pop group tried to assimilate the style of music as a part of their identity, fusing contrasting genres within a singular track. Songs like Oh Oh obviously aimed for audacity and succeeded in doing so at its own peril. For many listeners, the abrupt tonal shifts, disjointed production, and atrocious mixing felt as though two entirely different songs had been stitched together haphazardly. The best way I can explain Oh Oh is two different sounds screaming over each other, vying for attention, instead of blending together in a satisfying way. An approach that didn't appeal to the majority of people who tuned in, myself included. I eventually found myself enjoying it, but whether that's because I found things to appreciate about it, or I convinced myself to like it through exposure therapy, is anybody's guess. I still hate that stupid Coke sponsorship though. That was such a terrible idea. For a rookie group, it was a bold move, but it didn't land smoothly in an industry where first impressions are everything. People were left wondering if this style could really find its place in K-pop, where trends thrive. Despite this rocky start, NMIXX's team remained committed to their unique concept when it came to the lore and the music. Rather than retreat to safer, more conventional sounds, their releases continue to lean into the bold and experimental identity crafted for the group. Take Dice, for example. It kept the high-energy vibe of OO, but the transitions between sounds were smoother, less abrupt. The chaos present in their music seemed to have had purpose. And for some listeners, it finally started to feel exciting rather than nonsensical. NMIXX's unique sound didn't soften, it sharpened. Now, it would be remiss of me not to mention the releases that followed. Expergo and Party O'Clock distinctively absent of Mixpop. But I think it's safe to say with 2020 vision that NMIXX's original musicality was taking its time to be transformed and was not abandoned. Now, with the release of Break in 2024, it feels like everything has come together. The album doesn't lose any of the daring energy that defined NMIXX's earlier work, but it does refine it. Each track feels like it knows exactly what it wants to be now. Their production is still complex, but now it's balanced. It's controlled chaos, not just chaos. To interject with a personal anecdote, again, I have to admit that I've always been a bit hesitant about NMIXX as a group. Their talent has never been in question, but the releases have often felt hit or miss for me. For every track that genuinely grabbed me, another left me unsure and wanting more. But when the pre-release of Sonar dropped, something shifted for me. It was like my third eye opened. Call it intuition or luck, but I just had this feeling that this comeback was gonna be different. And judging by the fact I'm here making this video, I can confidently say that I was right. As a pre-release, Sonar delivered on NMIXX's signature concept, proving, at least to me, that the concept itself was never the issue. The criticism they faced wasn't because Mixpop was inherently flawed, but because its execution was bad. It was just bad. This newest rendition was the demonstration I needed that Mixpop could work, given that it was provided the time and effort to do so. NMIXX has always been at their most compelling when they lean into their eccentricity, and Sonar is the kind of track that thrives on excess. It operates in extremes. Thunderous percussion, solid deliveries, and a repetitive repeating chorus that stretches into something almost theatrical. The production is equally unafraid to sprawl. The Latin hip-hop sections hit with a percussive density that feels muscular and commanding, while the UK garage switch-up washes over the track like an unexpected mirage, delicate, dreamlike, and almost untouchable. The contrast is jarring in the best way, turning Sonar into an exercise in sonic duality, grounded yet ethereal, aggressive yet fluid. The result is one of their most fully realized experiments to date. A dreamscape set to a pulse-pounding rhythm refusing to fade quietly. Now we come to the title track, Dash. It blends hip-hop and pop rock, and it's packed with energy from start to finish. The bass is loud as can be, just how I like it. The verses have these descending melodies that slow things down a bit, giving it a laid-back vibe before everything picks up again. It's a cool contrast that builds tension, making the chorus hit even harder when it does come. The ad-libs are a nice touch too, with some smooth harmonies that fill out the sound to an otherwise empty instrumental. A real standout moment for me is in the second chorus, where a bit of artificial time dilation is put into play. In actuality, the track maintains its BPM during its entirety, but uses sound effects like that of a rewind and slowed speech to create the illusion of change. It's like a slowdown before suddenly speeding back up again, creating this rush of energy. There's also some jazz instrumentation woven into the mix, which adds a bit of consistency for the listener to rely on, allowing changes to be built upon rather than dramatically and jarringly switching genres on a whim. The shifts between styles feels organic, almost effortless, as if the genres are now speaking to each other instead of shouting bloody murder. The real cherry on top of this cake is how Dash handles tension. Tension in a song is crucial because it keeps the listener hooked. It creates a sense of anticipation and payoff. Throw back to my K-pop 2024 video. making the moments of release feel more satisfying. When tension is built effectively, it pulls the listener through the song, guiding them through quieter, slower parts, and then letting them explode into high-energy sections. It gives the music purpose, making each explosion of high energy feel earned and deserved. In a discography that often embraces volatility, Run for Roses stands out for its sheer fluidity. Unlike the sharp pivots and rapid-fire shifts that have defined NMIXX's identity, this track luxuriates in its own momentum, embracing a steady, forward-driving energy that feels both refreshing and unshakable. What makes Run for Roses unique is its fusion of country pop aesthetics with a glossy, modern K-pop sheen, an unusual but well-executed pairing. The song's structure is deceptively simple, but its arrangement is anything but. The production layers bright, reverb-drenched guitars over a percussive foundation that remains crisp and propulsive, creating an expansive, almost windswept atmosphere. But where the song truly shines is its bridge. The gradual layering of harmonies and instrumental swells gives way to one of the most euphoric climaxes in NMIXX's catalog. If I absolutely had to nitpick something about this song, it would be the use of a virtual violin. In music production, it's pretty common to use plugins to emulate real instruments, and this track uses one for the violin. It doesn't sound bad per se, and most people probably wouldn't notice unless they're familiar with the instrument. I only picked up on it because I've spent years having to hear my brother practice the viola in the other room. That said, the violin plugin used here feels a bit obvious. If they didn't want to use a real violin, that's fine, but opting for a higher quality VST would have elevated the track further, showing an extra layer of care. But like I said, this is more a personal gripe than anything that substantially undermines the song. It's damn near a 10 out of 10 in my book. To put it simply, Run for Roses was one of my favorite K-pop B-sides of 2024. Boom is crack. Boom is straight up crack. There's no better way to put it. If Run for Roses was one of my favorite K-pop B-sides from last year, then Boom is my favorite K-pop B-side of 2024. For the majority of Boom, NMIXX lean into a bruising hip-hop soundscape, thick with seismic bass and a staggered, almost lurching momentum. The production is dense, layering warped synths over a beat that slows and speeds with an almost mischievous unpredictability. There's weight to this track, not just in the low end, but in the sheer force of the artist's delivery. Jihyo and Kyujin in particular showed a side of themselves that I hadn't seen before with this level of proficiency. And then, of course, inevitably, is the classic NMIXX twist. The final section explodes in an entirely different mode, a euphoric pop break, all soaring vocals and anthemic grandeur. It's a twist on a twist, so to speak. It's an inversion of NMIXX's usual mix pop formula, where their jarring transitions typically arrive mid-song rather than a climactic finale. Here, the switch feels cathartic, almost triumphant, as if the track has been building towards this all along. While the track's structure and off-kilter style may alienate those who prefer a more conventional approach to songwriting, Boom thrives on it because it understands its own spectacle. NMIXX's Passion Fruit finds the group playing with texture and momentum in a way that feels both fluid and tightly controlled. Built on a foundation of Jersey club bounce, the track moves with an effervescence that sets it apart from their more structurally unpredictable past releases. The song's core appeal lies in its interplay between rhythm and melody. The percussive shuffle of Jersey club influences never overpowers the track, instead providing a framework for the group's diverse vocal palette. The members weave in and out a falsetto, layering cool, gliding tones over a crisp beat. A call-and-response pre-chorus heightens the track's dynamism, reinforcing its communal energy before launching into an understated but undeniably catchy hook. The rap sections land with an effortless confidence, playing off the buoyant instrumental without feeling like a forced contrast. Rather than serving as a disruptive detour as many K-pop rap sections do, this one feels integral to the track's forward momentum. Where some of NMIXX's previous singles have thrived on abrupt left turns, Passion Fruit shows a different kind of complexity, one rooted in balance rather than contrast. It doesn't demand attention through sheer force, it earns it by understanding the push and pull of its own elements. The result is one of their most effortlessly engaging tracks to date. NMIXX's XOXO operates in a space of duality, balancing delicate R&B-infected melodies with the weight of a trap beat. The song's vocal arrangement is one of its most striking features. A contrast of breathy falsetto and full-bodied chest voice runs throughout, giving XOXO a natural ebb and flow that feels both intimate and expansive. Harmonies bloom over sweet, subtly shifting chord progressions, lending the track a warmth that offsets the cool snap of its production. The bridge, in particular, feels like a slow-motion ascent, stacking vocals and instrumentation in a way that lingers long after the song ends. Underneath the vocal finesse, the instrumental remains sleeked and restrained. The trap beat isn't overbearing, instead it pulses steadily beneath the surface, giving the song a quiet confidence rather than pushing it forward excessively. The production makes space for nuance, allowing the emotional weight of the melodies to take precedence over sheer impact. And finally, NMIXX's Break the Wall is undoubtedly the anthem of this album. At its core, Break the Wall is a pop song, but one that borrows from anthemic traditions. The production remains sleek yet forceful, with the synth bass acting as its backbone, grounding the song's loftier elements in something tactile. The chorus, grand and unrelenting, is where the track finds its true character, less a melody to hum along to and more a declaration to be shouted. The song's minimal pre-chorus is a striking contrast, momentarily pulling back to reveal an almost introspective pause, before launching into its maximalist hook. Though Break the Wall doesn't necessarily rewrite the formula for anthemic pop, it does execute its vision with confidence. It's polished without feeling sterile, impassioned without being overwrought. More than anything, it's a testament to NMIXX's ability to harness sheer vocal power and make it feel like movement, like breaking through. NMIXX's public perception is largely shaped by their musical reception. Like many, I recognize their talent, but their music output has kept me from fully embracing them, a sentiment that has persisted since their debut. If anything, their vocal and performance skills are consistently being praised. They've just been overshadowed by their divisive discography. This created an unusual predicament. A group widely acknowledged for their skill, yet met with resistance because of the very music meant to showcase it. Their subsequent releases polarized audiences, further cementing the idea that NMIXX was a group struggling to find a sound that resonated with the broader public. However, as time progressed, so did the perception of NMIXX. The shift didn't happen overnight, nor did it come from a drastic reinvention. Rather, it was the accumulation of their continued experimentation. And honestly, people just slowly acclimated to their style. Tracks like Roller Coaster, Love Me Like This, and Party O'Clock, while playing it safer in terms of structure, helped rehabilitate their public image, positioning them as more palatable to the mainstream audience. From the outset, NMIXX's identity was inextricably linked to risk-taking, whether one viewed it as such or just bad music. Because of this, universal appeal was never in the cards for them. I don't imagine that JYP Entertainment was naive enough to think otherwise. The ongoing dissonance between their original sound and the commercially palatable side of themselves has not only shaped their discography, but has also dictated the discourse surrounding them. In short, the more they lose their identity, the more successful they become. This is precisely why I struggle with their more conventional releases. It's not like they lack merit. I genuinely enjoy Love Me Like This, but what they signify unsettles me. They feel less like a natural progression and more like a strategic concession, an acquiescence to external pressures rather than a continuation of NMIXX's unorthodox musical ethos. This shift has rendered a schism within their audience, splitting listeners into those who crave their initial chaos and those who favor the accessibility of their more recent output. I delved into this extensively in my Stickout review. I'll put it up above. You can check it out if you're more interested in that, as I'm not talking about it as deeply here. But the point bears repeating. When an artist enters the mainstream with a sound that disrupts the norm and then pivots to the mainstream, they create an inherent contradiction that is difficult to reconcile. That's why Break struck such a chord with me. It demonstrated that NMIXX can evolve without forfeiting the qualities that set them apart. Their music remains dynamic and unpredictable, yet it has been polished in a way that accentuates their strengths rather than magnifying their weaknesses. In a climate where even the most conceptually ambitious girl groups have felt creatively stagnant over the past year, NMIXX's refusal to fully assimilate is, in itself, a statement on self-identity. Were they to continue pursuing the commercial viability that songs like Love Me Like This suggest, I believe they would risk eroding the very essence of what makes them singular. Whether one finds their music exhilarating or abrasive, there is no denying that NMIXX is one of the few acts still willing to set themselves apart. And in an industry that so often rewards trend chasing over just trying something new, that is something worth preserving. And while all of this probably came off as me hyping them up a lot, and actually I'm doing a pretty good job if I say so myself. But anyway, I have a lot of respect for NMIXX and the team behind them for remaining committed to their concept and sound. But this does come with some concessions. First and foremost, NMIXX is under JYP, a behemoth in the industry that has been producing music across various artists since 1997. There is simply no justification, none, for why their debut was as bad as it was. You mean to tell me that a company with over 2 decades of experience, access to both in-house and outsourced producers, extensive research into music trends, and supposedly top-tier training idol resources gave us OO? Really? Don't get me wrong, I said it before, I'll say it now, I like OO. But I'd be lying if I said I got it on the first listen, or even the second. As I've emphasized before, NMIXX's core concept and sound was never the issue. It was always the execution. And had the execution of OO been stronger, NMIXX would have undoubtedly been in a far more advantageous position from the outset. They would be in a better position today even. I don't think that's a controversial take. Moreover, because they hail from such an influential company, they aren't operating as an indie artist or something. While I've consistently applauded their commitment to their vision, it's crucial to acknowledge that this is far more feasible under the umbrella of a powerhouse like JYP. They have the luxury of calculated risks, a broader margin for experimentation, and most importantly, an entire team strategically orchestrating their every move. Finally, my appreciation for NMIXX does not equate to a rejection of further artistic exploration. If they choose to venture into new genres or concepts, I would welcome that evolution happily. My apprehension lies solely in the prospect of them becoming yet another formulaic K-pop act. I know I've reiterated this, but a significant takeaway from my stick-out review was the misconception that I want NMIXX to remain on a singular trajectory indefinitely. That is simply not the case. My concern about their increasing of easy listening tracks isn't about resisting change, it's about resisting the slow fade into uniformity. And that is why I wanted to make this video. Not just because I like the album, although I definitely did, but because I finally understood what makes NMIXX compelling in a way I hadn't before. I think that Break was a glimpse into the group that NMIXX can be, what they could become, and I don't want to lose that. They are definitely a group defined by these fractures, not as weaknesses, but as openings for evolution. And honestly, I cannot wait to see what they do next. So the last note that I want to end on for this video is a positive one. I don't want anyone to take my negative notes as some sort of detractions from the group themselves. I absolutely think that they are a fully capable group and they will go on to do great things. Just me, personally, I don't want to sell the illusion of some sort of perfect group. If possible, I would like to shine light on both the good and the bad. And honestly, with NMIXX, you have more good than bad. Anyway, that'll be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you thought in the comments down below. That'll be it from me for now. See y'all later. Bye-bye.